We've had some water quality issues here that are questionable. We've had red tide blooms, and red tide's been going on for thousands of years. We know that it's like in the fossil record, and they do seem to start offshore, and it's mysterious as to why we get these blooms. But one thing's clear, that we've never been dumping so much nutrient-rich fresh water from Lake Okeechobee down the Caloosahatchee River into the Gulf. That's never, ever happened before. It's gotten worse and worse over time, and the red tide's gotten worse, and it seems to be linked to neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. And there's something called bioaccumulation theory of brevetoxin, and it does seem to move up the food chain, but it's not well understood. It seems that most fishermen I encounter, they seem to believe that the fish are safe, and I'm not convinced of that yet. In the meantime, I practice catch and release. I would like to see the healthiest ecosystem possible here, and I have enough food. I don't need to eat these fish. And so to me, it's being with nature and sharpening my skills. I would like to have the skill to catch fish wherever I go if need be. And in saltwater, once you get the swing of it, if you have the skills to fish one location, you can learn any location, really.
No, that's amazing. And I think maybe we can touch base on two themes that you've been connecting on. One is perhaps the ecological things that you've been witnessing with the red tide. But also maybe first we can talk a little bit about, of course, you have mentioned the thrill of being out there in the wild and these encounters and how they're very primal. And one of the things in both of us being contemplative and spiritual seekers in a way, using tools on how to get present and be in the moment. And nature seems to really facilitate that. And in particular, when you have these kind of encounters, which I haven't had so many, I can only imagine how they bring you out of your thought into what's happening there and then, because perhaps you have to.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I mean, I would call it like there's nothing else to do but to meditate through the experience when you're either in nature with your awareness at its absolute peak, listening to every little sound around you, or out on the beach and keeping track of every single changing condition, the wind, the water, clarity, just everything. On any given day, the fish might be biting one bait or a different one, or they're feeding near the top of the water column or the bottom, and it takes a great intuition to understand when the conditions are just right for certain types of anything. And so to just go out there and soak it all in and take in that awareness and be there for it and wait and be patient and to be ready right when the fish bites, that is absolutely a practice of presence. Absolutely.
Fascinating. I mean, that's remarkable to have such a fun and engaging tool to train yourself and to transform your mind into something that can stay focused and present. Hopefully as I said, I talk to you always, and I was like, I got to head more in that direction, because there's also a joy to be in nature. As you said, healing. And where else can you have all those elements of developing one-pointedness, focus, presence, while at the same time enjoying it and healed by it? That's a win-win in many ways.
I completely agree.
I was just thinking maybe we could wrap up the ecological thread first, but what really have you been witnessing here? And this, by the way, is in Florida. Maybe you could tell a little bit about the location you're seeing this.
Yeah, so I'm in Fort Myers, which is right at the base of the Caloosahatchee River, where it empties into the Gulf. And from this point south all the way down to the Everglades has been strongly affected by red tide. And we see literally the color change in the water. It will become red. I mean, if you take a clear glass and hold it up to the light, it's red. It's red water, literally. And there's fish kills. The fish die off, starting with the fish that eat algae, like mullet. Mullet eat algae, and then catfish as well, because they feed off the bottom. And it seems like it appears that this algae settles in the bottom and the catfish are consuming it along with whatever else they're eating. So there's some species like the canaries in the coal mine that go first. And then as the red tide persists, it begins affecting other organisms, and especially filter feeders and crabs, and anything that eats crabs is going to be affected by it. A lot of fish are migratory, and they come through areas, and they know better than to hang out in bad water. But often, when it's really bad, even the smartest sea creatures are affected. For example, a couple of years ago, we saw die-offs of dolphins.
Wow.
We've seen die-offs of sea turtles and large deep dwelling fish like grouper. We've seen now manatees. Manatees don't seem to be affected the same way other fish are. Most of the fish, basically, they end up losing oxygen and dying because they basically just aren't respirating. But the manatees, what's happened with them is all this nutrient-rich water and the color change of the water has killed off the seagrass at the bottom of the ocean and the bottom of the river. And there's no grass for the manatees to eat. And they've gotten skinny. And now we're just seeing them wash up on the shores. There's dead manatees everywhere. It's kind of hard to believe that. I just ran into a fisherman the other day on the beach that claimed he was in marine construction and red tide is the hoax and he doesn't believe in it and he's on the water all the time. It's not as bad as people say it is, but I don't know. I've seen all these animals dead with my own eyes. I've seen a 500-pound grouper wash up on the beach dead. I've seen dead sea turtles. I haven't seen the dolphins firsthand, but I've seen the reports of them and I know where they came up. I know the beaches personally. I've seen the mullet and the catfish, and I've seen all the other species that end up with them in smaller numbers. In 2018, when I first got here, it was so bad that you couldn't even really breathe outside. Even driving a car with the air set to recirculate, it was like noxious gas. You're coughing, and it like will make your eyes burn and water, and it's like one of the most toxic things you can imagine. And as far as the eye can see will be dead fish everywhere. And yeah, it's quite gut wrenching actually.
Yeah, no, it sounds quite serious. And so as you were saying, is the root cause of that is the nutrient dense fresh water that's being dumped, or is it also?
Yes, all of these things. There's some denial going on as to what the role of humans has been in this, but clearly it is a man-made or a man-exaggerated problem, I should say, because a long time ago, the water used to run from the Lake Okeechobee area straight south into the Everglades. And over time, humans, the last 100 years or so, they dredged canals through all of Florida and drain all the swampland so that they could use it for ranching. Originally, it was ranching, but now those ranches are being sold off and there's developments being built and other types of agriculture, and it's being farmed heavily, or it's turned into golf courses where they're using a lot of fertilizers, things of that nature. The water is no longer flowing to the Everglades, so it's collecting in Lake Okeechobee, but they have an old dam system and they have to manage the water level. So come the rain season during the summer, the rain comes heavy and they have to keep discharging in order to maintain the level of the lake to prevent a great disaster with the dam. And they just keep dumping it into the Caloosahatchee River, and they dump it in when they have to as well. They dump it east as well. But most of it comes west down the Caloosahatchee River now. And it's really unfortunate. They'll dump up to 50,000 gallons per second. That's a lot of water. That's a lot of water. And yeah, they've begun developing some plans to correct this, starting with some other holding facilities so they can lower the lake level and move it to another area. But it's only a partial solution and they've done nothing to improve the water quality. It's still going to grow algae in just a new location. Algae in the river or in another holding area is no better than algae in the ocean. Yeah.
Doesn't the
And
river actually end up eventually leading to the ocean?
yes, yes, it does. Yeah. So ideally, a lot of that water would go back to the Everglades. And there's actually been problems in the Everglades because they've taken away so much of the water over the years. So that would be good to send that water back there. But meanwhile, we haven't seen much action on this problem because the trigger for what actually triggers the bloom of red tide and the life cycle of the red tide, we just don't understand yet. The science is still young. We just don't know. And so, no one can really point like a finger at exactly what the cause is when the red tide arises and how long it's going to be there for and how devastating it's going to be this time. No one has any idea. It's really just guessing.
But I think that one thing that is rather obvious with a lot of these problems that we're seeing today, even with the virus, coronavirus and its variants and such, being associated with the changes in the ecosystem and the ecology. So although the direct reasons might never be known or might be known, we do know what kind of behaviors are stressing out the ecosystems or very abnormal to how things are. And I think you've just highlighted a number of those, from the golf courses to the nutrient-rich water to a number of other things that are definitely putting a lot of strain and stress on how things used to be. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. It's amazing to think. I mean, as a fishery, as a place where you can go fishing, Florida is an incredible place, but to imagine what it must have been like 100 years ago is like unthinkable. It's just unthinkable. I mean, the numbers of fish have been greatly reduced. And I don't know, we've definitely changed the oceans. We've definitely changed the ecology. The impacts are undeniable.